It started the night Vanessa cooked dinner, her first in years. She smiled like she meant it, poured the wine like she'd miss me. Then, between one sip and the next, she dropped his name. Dylan. Her old lover. Her new boss. The man whose shadow I'd been living in without realizing it. I came home smelling of damp wood and plaster dust, the storm having torn through 3 roofs that day. My clothes clung to me, my hands ached, and all I wanted was silence. Instead, I walked into the scent of garlic butter and something faintly sweet, a smell I hadn't felt in our kitchen for years. Vanessa was cooking. She stood barefoot, hair pulled up, one of my old shirts hanging off her shoulder like it belonged to her again. The sight stopped me cold. For a second, I just watched. The way her hips swayed slightly with the rhythm of the music playing low from the speaker. She stirred the pan like she was remembering how. "You're early," she said without turning. Her voice carried a lightness that hadn't been there lately. "So are you," I replied, setting my tool bag down by the counter. "What's all this?" "Dinner." She smiled, glancing back over her shoulder. "A proper one. Don't look so surprised." I was surprised. Vanessa hadn't cooked in years, not since her promotion at the firm. Since then, everything came in paper bags or aluminum trays. Watching her slice vegetables now felt like stepping back into a version of her I thought was gone. I loosened my boots and leaned against the counter. "What's the occasion?" "Do I need one?" she asked, arching her brow. "No," I said carefully. "But I know you." She laughed under her breath, poured wine into a glass, and slid it toward me. "Then maybe I'm trying something new." The wine was red, full-bodied, dry, the kind she used to love. I took a sip and let it roll over my tongue, searching for meaning in the gesture. Dinner was good, too good. Garlic shrimp over linguine, a salad that actually had color, even a candle between us. We talked about Emma's latest sketch for her art class, about the roof I'd been patching, about nothing that mattered. It almost felt normal, until it didn't. Vanessa swirled her fork, eyes distant. "So," she said, tone too casual, "Dylan's coming by tomorrow night." The name hit me like a nail through the table. "Dylan," I repeated, my voice quieter than I intended. She nodded, sipping her wine. "Yeah, he's in town for the week. Thought it'd be nice to catch up. Just dinner. Don't make it weird. Don't make it weird." That was her way of saying, don't show how you really feel. I put my fork down, staring at her. Dylan Reeves. The name alone brought the taste of iron to my mouth. Her ex. The man who once called her the one that got away. The man who now signed her checks. "Why here?" I asked. "Because it's dinner, Ethan," she said, meeting my gaze. "Not a summit meeting. He's my boss. And an old friend." Old friend. I couldn't help the edge in my voice. She sighed, rolling her eyes. "You're doing again." "Doing what?" "Making everything a problem." I leaned back, forcing my tone calm. "It's not a problem. It's just strange, that's all. You haven't cooked for me in years, and now suddenly." "Don't read into everything," she cut in. "It's dinner. You'll be here, right? Keep it civil." Her confidence unsettled me, like she'd already made peace with something I hadn't even been told yet. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, sure. Civil." She smiled, the kind of smile that says good boy more than thank you. After dinner, she hummed while washing the dishes, sleeves rolled to her elbows. I stood in the doorway, watching the way the warm light played against her neck, the subtle curve of her back beneath the fabric. There was still a magnetic pull between us, the kind that made you forget everything except the sound of her breathing. I wanted to walk up behind her, kiss her shoulder, remind her what that tension meant. But something about the evening, the way she'd dropped Dylan's name mid-bite like a casual afterthought, had changed the air. Instead, I said quietly, "You really haven't seen him since?" "Since before you and I met," she said, without looking up. Then, after a pause, "Why?" "Just wondering if he's the type to visit old flames." She turned, leaning against the sink, eyes sharp now. "You're not seriously jealous, are you?" "I'm just asking questions." "Well, don't," she said, voice tightening. "It's exhausting." The conversation died there. Later that night, I lay in bed listening to her in the bathroom, the click of her makeup drawer, the soft spray of perfume. She never wore perfume at home. The scent drifted through the half-open door, floral and heavy. When she slid into bed, beside me, her skin was warm. She turned her back, exhaled softly, and within minutes her breathing slowed. I stared at the ceiling. In the darkness, my thoughts flickered with old images. The way she once laughed when we first met, hair wet from the rain. The way her eyes looked at me like I was the only man in the world. That look had faded, replaced by something more distant. Tomorrow night, Dylan Reeves would sit at my table. The man she used to love. The man who now had power over her career. And she told me not to make it weird. But as I lay there, listening to the rain outside and the rhythm of her sleep beside me, I already knew. The storm had just begun. The next evening, I came home early, too early, judging by the way Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the clock as I walked in. She'd been setting the table, 2 candles flickering between plates that looked like they'd been chosen for symmetry, not sentiment. She wore a black dress I hadn't seen in months, low-cut just enough to make me remember how her skin felt against mine. "You're home," she said. "Figured I'd lend a hand." She smiled tightly. "You don't have to." "I know," I said. "But I want to." The kitchen gleamed. The kind of clean that isn't just about order, it's about control. She'd polished the silverware, folded the napkins like we were hosting an ambassador. For Dylan Reeves, apparently we were. When the doorbell rang, my stomach tightened in a way I couldn't quite disguise. Vanessa glanced at me before she went to answer it. The sound of his voice came before his face did. Smooth, practiced, confident. "Vanessa," he said, and I could almost hear the grin in his tone. "Dylan," she replied, warm, familiar. Too familiar. Then he stepped inside. Dylan Reeves looked like success had been tailor-made for him. Perfectly fitted charcoal coat, dark hair just beginning to gray at the temples, a smirk that belonged in a boardroom or a bar, depending on the lighting. "Ethan." He extended a hand as though we were old comrades, not the awkward halves of Vanessa's history. "Heard a lot about you." "Likewise," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, just long enough to suggest dominance without declaring it outright. Dinner began politely enough. Vanessa poured wine. Dylan complimented the house, the food, even the playlist she'd chosen. He spoke with the smooth rhythm of someone used to being listened to. Every few sentences, Vanessa laughed, really laughed, the kind that lifted her shoulders and softened her face. I hadn't heard that sound in years. "So," Dylan said midway through, swirling his glass. "Vanessa tells me you're still doing inspections. Houses, repairs, all that." "Still," I said. "Good work," he nodded. "Honest work. Not many people like that left. Pays the bills." He smiled, but there was a faint gleam in his eyes. "And I imagine it's nice to come home to, well, this." He gestured vaguely toward her, toward the table, toward the life I was realizing had more cracks than drywall. Vanessa shifted slightly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Dylan stopped. "What?" he said, feigning innocence. "I'm just saying he's a lucky man." The air tightened. I forced a smile and took a slow sip of wine. "Back in the day," Dylan went on, "she used to laugh all the time. Couldn't take her anywhere without turning heads." "She still does," I said evenly. He chuckled, meeting my eyes. "Sure. Just different, I guess. People change." Vanessa shot him a warning look, but he ignored it. His attention lingered on her as he spoke, like she was a memory he hadn't finished savoring. "You remember that trip to Santa Fe?" he asked her. Her fork hesitated. "Barely." "I doubt that," he said softly. "You bought that ridiculous turquoise necklace, said it made you feel free." She laughed once, awkwardly. "You remember too much." I stared at my plate, pretending to focus on the food. But all I could see was the way her eyes shimmered, not from guilt, but nostalgia. That look, God, I'd missed that look. Only it wasn't for me anymore. Conversation drifted after that. Work talk, politics, some story about a client who mistook Dylan for an actor. I smiled in the right places, nodded when required, but inside something burned. Every time his voice dipped into that low, easy tone she used to crave, I felt it, a sharp, invisible pull in her. At one point, she stood to clear the dishes. Dylan rose too. "Let me help." "I've got it," she said, but he followed her anyway, and I watched their silhouettes move together in the kitchen's soft light. Too close, too natural. When she turned back to the table, her cheeks were slightly flushed. I caught Dylan's smirk. It wasn't cruel, just knowing. The kind of smile that said I still could if I wanted to. Dessert passed in silence. Coffee came next, strong and bitter. Dylan complimented the meal again, thanked her, shook my hand once more. "It was good seeing you both," he said, coat over his arm. "Vanessa, I'll see you at the office tomorrow." "Of course," she said. "Good night, Ethan." "Night," I managed. The door shut. The sound echoed through the quiet like a gunshot. Vanessa leaned against the counter, exhaling. "That went better than I expected." "Did it?" I asked. She frowned slightly. "You're doing that thing again." "What thing?" "Reading into everything." I stared at her. "He was flirting with you." "He flirts with everyone," she said, brushing it off. "It's just Dylan." "That's supposed to make me feel better?" She sighed, walked past me, and started collecting glasses. "It was dinner, Ethan. One night. Stop making it something it's not." But I'd seen the way she looked at him, the way his presence lit something in her that had long gone dim. When she went upstairs later, I stayed behind, finishing the last of the wine. The glass trembled faintly in my hand. The storm outside had passed, but inside it was only beginning. The morning after Dylan's visit, I woke to an empty bed. The sheets beside me were cool, undisturbed. Downstairs, the house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the rain tapping on the windows. Her mug sat in the sink, half-drunk coffee, a smudge of lipstick on the rim. She'd left early. No note, no message. Just absence, the kind that filled every corner and felt heavier than sound. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the phone she'd left charging on the counter. It buzzed once, the screen lighting up with a preview. "Dylan, last night was nostalgic." The message lingered there, mocking me. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The 3 dots of memory were already enough. I told myself it was harmless, just a text. But the word nostalgic burned like acid. Nostalgia was another way of saying, "I miss the way you used to make me feel." By the time Emma came down, I'd already poured 2 cups of coffee, one of which I didn't touch. My daughter's eyes flicked from the untouched mug to my face. "Mom gone?" she asked. "Work," I said. She nodded, pulling a piece of toast from a counter. "You okay, Dad?" "Of course," I lied. She watched me for a second longer, her teenage intuition sharper than any blade. Then she shrugged and disappeared upstairs again, earbuds already in. I sat at the table, staring through the window at the gray drizzle outside. The rain had a rhythm, steady and relentless, like time itself grinding down what was left of us. At work, the day blurred into repetition. The storm the night before had left a trail of broken shingles, warped ceilings, and flooded basements. My job was to walk through the wreckage, clipboard in hand, pretending not to see myself in the ruins. In one house, I traced my finger along a crack in the plaster, thin but deep, spidering from the ceiling down to the floor. The homeowner asked if it was serious. I told him no, just cosmetic. But I knew better. Cracks like that always meant something beneath the surface was shifting. By evening, I was soaked in rain and exhaustion. The house felt colder when I came home. Vanessa's car wasn't in the driveway. Her shoes weren't by the door. Dinner was silent. Just me, a microwave meal, and the faint sound of Emma's music upstairs. At 9, I checked my phone out of habit. Nothing from Vanessa. Not a call, not a message. But when I looked again at her phone charger on the counter, I realized she hadn't even taken it that morning. I went to bed without turning on the light. The sheets still smelled faintly of her perfume from the night before, that floral sweetness that now made my chest tighten. Around midnight, the front door clicked open. Her footsteps were soft, deliberate. I pretended to sleep. She slipped into bed beside me, her skin cold from the rain. She didn't touch me, didn't say a word. Just turned away, like 2 strangers forced to share a mattress. I lay there, eyes open, listening to her slow, steady breathing. My heart felt like the cracked walls I'd seen all day, solid from the outside, hollow within. Days turned into weeks. The pattern continued. Late nights, vague explanations, the occasional text I wasn't meant to see. She was slipping away, inch by inch, and I was letting her. One evening, Emma came into the garage while I was fixing a shelf. She stood there quietly, biting her lip. "Mom's been weird," she said finally. I looked up from the screwdriver. "Weird how?" "She doesn't talk much. Always on her phone. When I ask what's wrong, she says she's tired." "She's just stressed," I said automatically. Emma frowned. "You're both stressed." Her words hung there, small but sharp. She left before I could answer. Later, after she went to bed, I went for a run. The rain had started again, a steady drizzle that soaked my clothes and blurred the streetlights into hazy gold halos. I ran, without direction, without purpose, just trying to feel something other than the slow ache building inside me. Every step pounded the same rhythm into the ground. You knew this was coming. You knew. When I got home, Vanessa was sitting at the dining table, laptop open, papers scattered around her. She didn't look up when I came in. "Working late?" I asked. "Deadlines," she said. "Dylan keeping you busy?" Her eyes flicked up then, sharp. "Don't start." "I didn't," I said. "You did." She shut the laptop with a snap. "I'm not doing this tonight." "Doing what?" "This," she said, gesturing between us. The suspicion, the passive-aggressive questions. "I'm tired, Ethan." "So am I," I said quietly. She hesitated, something flickering behind her eyes. Then she stood and walked past me, heading upstairs. I listened to her footsteps fade. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling again. The cracks in the paint caught the moonlight, forming faint, crooked lines. Every house had them, those hairline fractures that grew if ignored. You could patch them, sand them, paint them over. But eventually, they came back. And ours were showing. I hadn't seen Ray Donovan in years, not since the firehouse closed down and he traded sirens for punching bags. Back then, he was Captain Donovan, the man who'd run into burning buildings without hesitation, barking orders through smoke while the rest of us just tried to keep up. Now he ran a gym downtown. The walls were lined with old gloves, faded photos, and a smell that clung to your skin, sweat, leather, and memory. I'd driven there on instinct after another silent breakfast with Vanessa. She'd barely looked at me as she left, saying something about client filings. The words had stopped meaning anything. Ray spotted me the second I walked in. "Jesus, if it isn't Ethan Pierce," he said, voice gravelly as ever. "You look like hell." "Good to see you too," I said, forcing a smile. He gestured to the ring. "Still throwing punches, or just taking them these days?" I shrugged. "Little of both." He laughed, tossed me a pair of gloves, and motioned toward the heavy bag. "Show me what's left in the tank." The first hit felt strange, like waking up an old muscle memory I'd forgotten I had. The dull thud echoed through the gym, followed by another and another. Sweat formed quickly, my breath growing ragged. Ray watched quietly until I stopped, chest heaving. "You don't hit like you used to," he said finally. "You hit like a man trying not to break something." "Maybe I am." He nodded, pulling up a stool. "What's her name?" I hesitated, wiping sweat from my face. "Vanessa." "Ah." He leaned back, folding his arms. "What does she do?" "Maybe nothing. Maybe everything," I said. "She's been distant. Always gone. There's someone else, I think." He didn't look surprised. "You think or you know?" I met his eyes. I saw it in the way she looked at him. "That'll do it." I sat down beside him, letting the quiet fill the space. The rhythmic pounding of another fighter's gloves echoed nearby. Ray waited, patient as ever. "You ever feel like you're just patching cracks?" I asked. "Like every time you fix one thing, another breaks?" "All the time," he said. "But that's life, kid. Houses, hearts, same rules apply. You ignore the damage long enough, the foundation gives out." I smiled faintly. "You always had a metaphor ready." "That's because you're a slow learner," he said, half grinning. Then his tone shifted. "Listen, Ethan. Some people don't respect quiet strength. They take it as permission. You keep swallowing your pride, they'll keep feeding you their lies. So what do I do?" He leaned forward. You stop waiting for her to tell you what's true. You find out yourself. And when you do, you decide if you're going to keep living in the ashes or start building something new. I nodded slowly. I don't even know where to start. Ray stood, patting my shoulder. Start with the bag. Start with your breath. Start with remembering who the hell you were before she forgot. He walked away to coach another fighter, leaving me alone with the heavy bag. I slipped the gloves back on, the leather creaking as I tightened the straps. The next punch came harder. Then another. Soon I wasn't thinking, just moving, just feeling the dull pain of flesh meeting canvas, the sting of sweat in my eyes. Each hit had a word behind it. Why? Her. Him. The bag swung wildly, but I kept hitting, letting the anger bleed through my arms. My body remembered what my mind had tried to bury, that I was still here. When I finally stopped, my knuckles ached, the world humming with adrenaline. Ray walked by, tossing me a towel. Not bad, he said. You keep that up, maybe you'll start feeling like yourself again. On the drive home, the rain had stopped. The streets glistened beneath the streetlights, reflections trembling in every puddle. I rolled down the window, breathing in the cold night air, the faint smell of wet asphalt and freedom. Vanessa's car wasn't in the driveway when I pulled in. I wasn't surprised. I just sat there for a while, listening to the tick of the cooling engine. Inside, the house was quiet except for the sound of Emma's music drifting down from upstairs. I stood in the hallway, staring at our wedding photo, the one where she was laughing, her hair catching sunlight. I wondered when that version of her had disappeared. Later, I found myself in the garage again, wrapping my hands with old tape I'd kept from the firehouse days. I punched the wall once, not hard enough to break anything, just enough to feel it. Ray's words echoed in my head. People like her don't respect quiet strength. They respect action. I didn't know what that action was yet. But for the first time in weeks, I felt awake. As I turned off the light, I caught my reflection in the small window. My face was tired, older. But the eyes, they were the same as the ones that once charged into flames without hesitation. Maybe I'd been putting out the wrong kind of fires. At first, it was little things, small disappearances that could almost pass for coincidence. Vanessa's perfume lingering on her coat when she said she'd worked late. A lipstick I hadn't seen before. The faint hum of her phone lighting up face down on the counter, only to be swept away before I could glance at it. Then it became patterns. Client dinners, team meetings, emergency filings. Each excuse crafted with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed. She didn't bother softening her tone anymore. She didn't even pretend to feel guilty. I stopped asking. She stopped pretending to care. The house began to shrink around me. Empty wine glasses on the counter, her half of the closet filling with clothes I never saw her wear, and Emma's growing silence at dinner. My daughter didn't ask questions anymore. She'd just eat quickly, murmur a good night, and vanish upstairs. She was learning, too, how to disappear. One night, after another late meeting, I drove out. I didn't have a plan, just followed the road, the part of me that refused to believe what I already knew. Downtown, the rain had started again, steady and cold. I spotted her car easily, the silver Lexus, parked 2 blocks from a hotel I recognized from her firm's newsletters, the kind that hosted exclusive conferences. I sat there in my truck, engine idling, watching the hotel's glowing entrance through streaks of rain on the windshield. For 20 minutes, I waited. Then she appeared. Vanessa walked out under the awning, her hair loose, her dress dark and clinging in the wet. She laughed, that soft, easy laugh I hadn't heard in so long. And beside her was Dylan, his coat draped over her shoulders like it belonged there. They stopped under the flickering streetlight, talking too close. She touched his arm, then his chest, and I saw her smile the way she used to smile at me, back when everything still felt real. I didn't move, didn't honk, didn't yell, didn't step out into the rain to demand explanations. I just watched her get into his car, the door closing with a dull thud that echoed louder than thunder. Then I turned the key, shifted into drive, and headed home. No confrontation, no scene, just silence. By the time I reached the house, my hands had stopped shaking, but the numbness was worse. I sat in the driveway until the rain slowed to a drizzle. Inside, the house smelled faintly of her perfume, a ghost that lingered long after she was gone. I poured a drink I didn't need, then another. The liquor burned on the way down, dulling the edges but not the pictures in my head. Vanessa's hand on Dylan's chest. The look in her eyes, not guilt, not hesitation. Something worse. Comfort. When she came home hours later, I was still awake. She paused in the doorway, her face flushed, rain droplets clinging to her hair. "Hey," she said carefully. "Hey. Didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." She hesitated, studying me for a beat. "I told you I had a meeting." "I know," I said. Her eyes narrowed slightly, like she could sense something beneath the surface. "Ethan, what are you implying?" "Nothing," I said. "You said meeting, and I believe you." The lie was sharp on my tongue, but I wanted her to hear it, to feel the weight of what she thought she was getting away with. She exhaled, relieved. "Thank you. I don't have the energy to argue tonight." She went upstairs. The sound of her footsteps was almost tender, almost familiar. I sat there for a long time after, staring into the glass in my hand until the ice melted. Then I went outside. The rain had stopped completely. The street was still, washed clean, the air thick with that after-storm quiet that always comes before something new breaks. I walked to the edge of the driveway and looked up at the house, our house, glowing faintly from her bedroom light. For years, I'd spent my life fixing other people's damage. Rotting beams, leaking roofs, broken windows. But now, the cracks weren't in the walls. They were in the person I'd built everything around. And this time, no amount of patching would hold. When I went back inside, Emma was standing at the top of the stairs. Her voice was small, careful. "Dad." "Yeah." "Are you and Mom fighting again?" I swallowed. "No, sweetheart. Just tired." She nodded slowly. "You should sleep then." "I will." She turned away, disappearing into her room. Her door clicked shut. I stood there, staring at it, feeling the weight of every lie that had built this house brick by brick. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, tracing the rim of my glass, watching the light crawl slowly up the walls. When Vanessa came down in the morning, her hair neatly brushed, her smile perfectly practiced, she said, "You're up early." I didn't answer. She kissed my cheek, the kind of kiss people give out of habit, not affection, and walked out the door. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. And that's when I realized something fundamental had changed. She wasn't just gone sometimes. She was leaving one piece at a time. And I was the only one still pretending not to see it. Ray could always read me before I spoke. The next time I walked into the gym, he didn't ask how I was doing. He just pointed toward the ring and said, "You look like a man who finally saw what he didn't want to." He wasn't wrong. I didn't tell him about the hotel or the laughter in the rain, but maybe I didn't have to. It was all over me, the quiet tension, the exhaustion that wasn't from work. "You know," Ray said as I wrapped my hands, "you've seen enough smoke to know when there's fire." "I just keep hoping it's fog," I muttered. He grunted. "That's not hope, son. That's denial with better lighting." I smiled faintly, but it didn't last. The bag hung in front of me, waiting, heavy and patient. I hit it once, twice, harder each time, until my knuckles throbbed and the dull ache in my chest found a rhythm. "Planning to stand in the ashes?" Ray asked. "I don't know what else to do." He stepped closer. "Then listen to me. If you're going to get burned, make sure it's by your own damn fire." That line stuck with me long after I left. By the time I got home, Vanessa was on the phone in the kitchen, laughing softly at something I couldn't hear. She turned away when she saw me, lowering her voice. "No, it'll be fine. I'll tell him tomorrow." My jaw tightened. "Tell me what?" She jumped slightly, then recovered. "Jesus, Ethan. You scared me." "Sorry." I leaned against the doorframe. "What's fine? What are you telling me tomorrow?" Her eyes flickered, just for a second, before she smiled. "Work thing. We're hosting a corporate dinner this weekend. Dylan wants the team to bring their partners. I was going to ask if you'd come." The word Dylan lodged itself under my skin like a splinter. I thought you said he was in town for a week. He extended his stay, she said lightly. He's got clients flying in. It's business. Of course it is, I said. She caught the tone, frowning. Please don't start. I'm not starting anything, I said. I'm just wondering when dinner with your boss became a couple's event. Her voice sharpened. You're unbelievable. You think everything revolves around your jealousy. This is work, Ethan. Work. And that's all it is? Her silence answered for her. I nodded slowly. Right. I'll be there. You don't have to. I said I'll be there, I repeated, my voice calm but steady. She hesitated, searching my face for something, maybe permission. Fine, she said finally. Dress appropriately. It's formal. That night I went into the garage and pulled out the suit she'd bought me years ago. Dark navy, almost black, the one I'd worn only twice. It still fit, though the shoulders felt heavier now. I polished my boots until I could see my reflection in them, then hung everything neatly by the door. I wasn't going to argue this time. I wasn't going to plead or accuse. I was going to end it. The next few days passed in silence. Vanessa busied herself with phone calls, meetings, and long hours at the office. I busied myself pretending not to care. Emma noticed, of course. She always did. You're quiet, she said one morning as I packed her lunch. Guess I'm just tired, I said. From Mom? Her question was too direct for a 14-year-old, but I didn't correct her. Something like that. She looked at me for a long moment, then said softly, You used to laugh more. I froze. That was almost exactly what Dylan had said to me over dinner. She used to laugh more. It felt like the world was feeding me my own reflection, cracked, distorted, mocking. Saturday came faster than I expected. Vanessa spent the afternoon getting ready, her movements deliberate and silent. She chose a crimson dress I'd never seen before, one that shimmered under the light and exposed just enough skin to make my throat tighten. She looked beautiful, devastatingly so. Do I look okay? She asked, adjusting an earring. You always do, I said. Her lips curved slightly. You clean up well yourself. We drove together, the silence between us thick as fog. The city lights blurred past the windshield. I could smell her perfume, that same floral scent that now felt like someone else's memory. When we reached the restaurant, a rooftop place overlooking the bay, I killed the engine and sat there for a moment. You coming? She asked, one hand already on the door. In a minute, I said. She nodded and stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement, her dress catching the wind like a flare in the dark. I watched her walk inside, every step erasing a little more of what we used to be. Then I took a deep breath, straightened my tie, and followed. The elevator doors opened to soft music, candlelight, and laughter. I spotted her instantly, Vanessa at the far corner, standing beside Dylan, her hand resting lightly on his arm as they spoke to a group of colleagues. She looked alive in a way she hadn't in months. The sight didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It just confirmed everything. Ray's words echoed in my head again. If you're going to get burned, make sure it's by your own damn fire. I adjusted my cuffs, squared my shoulders, and started walking. This time, I wasn't there to watch. I was there to finish it. The restaurant shimmered in gold light and soft jazz, the kind of place that made people forget they were just pretending to be happy. The rooftop air smelled of rain and expensive wine. I moved through the crowd slowly, invisible in a suit that finally had a purpose. Vanessa hadn't noticed me yet. She stood at the far end of the terrace beside Dylan, both of them framed by candles and city skyline. Her laugh drifted through the hum of conversation, unrestrained, familiar. His hand rested lightly on her back, as if he had every right to touch her. I stopped for a moment, taking it in. The polished silver, the murmuring voices, the perfection of their illusion. She looked radiant, alive, almost like she belonged in his world, not mine. Ray's voice echoed in my head. People like her don't respect quiet strength. They respect action. So I acted. I walked straight toward them, the soft clatter of cutlery fading around me. Heads turned. Maybe they sensed it, the shift in air pressure before a storm. Ethan. Vanessa's voice trembled slightly when she finally saw me. You made it. Wouldn't miss it, I said evenly. You look incredible. Dylan turned, his smirk settling into place like a mask. Ethan, good to see you again. I glanced at his hand, still hovering near her waist. Is it? Of course, he said smoothly. Vanessa was just telling us about the new expansion at the firm. Big move for her. I bet she's been very busy, I said. Late nights, long meetings, that sort of thing. Vanessa's eyes sharpened. Ethan. What? I asked softly, keeping my tone polite. Just making conversation. Dylan chuckled, but it sounded forced. You've got quite the sense of humor. Not really, I said. I just like when people are honest about what they're doing after hours. The table went silent. Glasses froze midair. Somewhere behind me, a waiter paused mid-step. Vanessa's face drained of color. Don't do this, she whispered. Do what? I said, turning to face her fully. Be honest? You asked me to keep it civil. I'm just trying to understand. Was the hotel part of this corporate expansion too? Her breath caught, just a flicker, but it was enough. The silence deepened. Dylan's jaw tightened, the confident smirk flickering out like a dying bulb. Ethan, he began, you're clearly misunderstanding. Am I? I said, my voice calm, but cutting. Because from where I was sitting, in my truck, watching you two laugh in the rain, it looked pretty clear. Vanessa's lips parted, no words coming out. Her colleagues looked everywhere, but at her. The sound of clinking glasses from other tables stopped entirely. Even the jazz seemed to fade, swallowed by the heavy quiet. Didn't realize I needed an invitation, I continued, to watch my wife with her boss. Someone at the next table coughed awkwardly. The word wife seemed to hang in the air, brittle and cruel. Dylan stepped forward, lowering his voice. Let's not make a scene. It's already made, I said. For a moment, everything froze, the kind of stillness that comes right before everything collapses. Vanessa reached for me, but I stepped back. Her hand hovered in the air, trembling. Ethan, please, she said quietly. Not here. Why not? I asked. You chose here. She looked around, realizing the eyes on her weren't full of admiration anymore. They were sharp, curious, judgmental. Her lips trembled once before she looked down. Dylan cleared his throat. I think it's best if we... No, I said. You've already said enough. Then I turned, my chair scraping softly against the marble floor, and walked away. I didn't wait for her to follow. I didn't look back to see the expression on Dylan's face. The elevator doors closed behind me with a hush that felt final. Downstairs, the city roared with life, horns, laughter, rain-slick streets reflecting 1,000 broken lights. I loosened my tie and stepped out into it, the air cold and clean. My phone buzzed in my pocket, her name flashing across the screen. I let it ring until it stopped. When I finally reached the truck, I sat there with the engine off, listening to the rain start again. It felt poetic, almost rehearsed. Through the glass, I could still see the rooftop above me, a golden rectangle in the dark, filled with people pretending they hadn't just witnessed something real. For years, I'd been invisible. The quiet husband, the reliable man, the one who waited, who understood, who forgave. But tonight they saw me. She saw me. And for once I didn't feel small. I felt alive. When I finally drove home, I didn't replay the scene. I didn't wonder what came next. The road ahead was slick, endless, and mine. Whatever storm came after this, it was one I was ready to face. She came home like thunder, fast, loud, and furious. I heard the tires screech before the door slammed open. The house shuddered from the force of her entrance. I didn't move. I sat on the couch, a half-empty glass of bourbon in my hand, waiting. "Are you insane?" she shouted, heels striking the hardwood like gunshots. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" I didn't look up. I think everyone at the restaurant figured it out. She stood there, breathless, her cheeks flushed red, eyes wild. "You humiliated me, Ethan. In front of my colleagues, my boss." "Ex-lover," I corrected softly. Her expression cracked for a split second, then hardened again. "You've ruined my career." "Then maybe you shouldn't have tried to build it in his bed," I said, and the calm in my own voice surprised me. She flinched, but recovered quickly. You don't get to talk to me like that. Then how should I talk to you, Vanessa? I asked, finally meeting her eyes. Like the woman who swore she'd never lie to me? Or the one who's been sneaking around for months, pretending I'm too stupid to notice? She paced, running her hands through her hair. You don't understand what you've done. Dylan's furious. There were clients there. People who? Who what? I interrupted. Who thought your marriage was perfect? Who thought you were untouchable? Congratulations, you proved them wrong. Her voice broke. You made me look like a fool. No, I said quietly. You did that all by yourself. The silence that followed was thick, charged with years of words we'd never said. The clock ticked on the wall, painfully loud. You're unbelievable, she finally said. I should have expected this. Your jealousy, your need to control everything. You've always been like this. I laughed once, dry and humorless. Control? Vanessa, you've been living your own script for months. I just walked on stage and turned the lights on. Her jaw tightened. You're pathetic. Maybe, I said. But at least I'm honest. For a moment, I thought she might slap me. Her hands trembled, her eyes burning with something between rage and shame. Then she spun away, grabbing her purse. I'm leaving, she said. I'll stay at a hotel tonight. Dylan's or yours? I asked. She froze in the doorway. The pause was her answer. When the door slammed, the whole house fell silent again. Not peaceful, just empty. Upstairs, I heard the faint creak of floorboards. Emma. I rubbed my face, exhaustion sinking in like cement. You shouldn't have seen that, I called softly. Her voice came from the stairs, trembling. I didn't want to. She stood halfway down, eyes red, still in her pajamas. My heart twisted. Emma, go back to bed. She was crying in the car, she said quietly. I saw her drive away. I know. She hesitated. Did you cheat on her first? The question hit harder than anything Vanessa had said. No, I whispered. I didn't. Then why did she? I didn't have an answer. I looked at her, this kid who still believed people broke things for reasons. Sometimes people forget what they promised, I said finally. And sometimes they remember too late. She nodded, her lips trembling. Are you going to leave too? No, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile. I'm not going anywhere. She came the rest of the way down and hugged me. I held her tight, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, trying to steady both of us. When she finally went back upstairs, I sat there for a long time, staring at the front door. Vanessa's perfume still hung faintly in the air, that same scent that used to mean comfort, now just the residue of deceit. I looked around at the house we'd built. Everything was perfect, too perfect. Clean counters, lined up frames, candles that hadn't been lit in months. The kind of house that photographs well, but no one really lives in. It hit me then. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a stage set built for two people pretending they were still in love. In the silence, the clock ticked again, steady and cruel. I picked up the remote, turned off the lamp, and let the darkness take over. For the first time in years, I didn't care if she came back. When I finally stood, I walked into the kitchen and stared out the window at the rain starting up again. It fell softly against the glass, tracing paths down like tears that had already decided where to go. I poured the last of the bourbon into my glass, raised it slightly toward the empty room, and whispered, "Here's to honesty." Then I drank. The storm outside grew louder, wind rattling the windows, thunder rolling far in the distance. It felt like the house itself was exhaling, relieved, maybe, to finally stop holding up the illusion. When I went to bed that night, I slept on my side of the bed, the other half cold and untouched. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like truth. The morning after she left, the house was too quiet. No hairdryer, no clinking of cups, no soft hum of her voice drifting from the kitchen. Just stillness, the kind that presses on your chest. I made coffee and didn't bother pouring a second cup. I sat at the table, staring at the steam as it curled into the air and vanished. It felt poetic. Everything we'd built together was doing the same thing, evaporating piece by piece. By noon, I started moving. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was survival. I began in the closet. Her dresses hung in neat rows, colors fading into each other like an organized lie. The scent of her perfume hit me, floral, expensive, intoxicating. And for a moment I froze. Every memory attached to that smell came back. Our first date, our first apartment, the night she told me she was pregnant. The night she said she'd never love anyone else. I pulled them down one by one. Folded, stacked, boxed. Mechanical. Detached. Next came the shoes. Dozens of pairs lined up like soldiers. I remembered how she used to walk barefoot through the house, saying heels made her feel powerful, but she never needed them here. That was before she forgot who she was at home. The wedding album was harder. It sat on the top shelf, gathering dust. When I opened it, the first photo was of her, eyes bright, veil fluttering in the wind, hand in mine. We looked invincible. The kind of couple that believes love alone can keep walls from cracking. I stared at that picture for a long time before closing it again. Then I placed it gently on the stack in the garage with everything else, the clothes, the framed photos, the jewelry box she never locked. The garage smelled of dust and oil, but at least it smelled honest. On the kitchen counter, I found her wedding ring. She must have taken it off before the restaurant, maybe before Dylan. It sat there like a small, perfect lie. I picked it up, felt its weight, then set it beside a note I'd written on a scrap of paper. You burned it all. I just swept the ashes. It felt final. After that, I drove to Ray's gym. When I walked in, he looked at me the way a medic looks at a soldier who's already been hit. So, he said, "It happened." "Yeah." "You still breathing?" "Barely." He nodded toward the ring. "Then hit something until it feels real." I didn't argue. I wrapped my hands, stepped onto the mat, and started swinging. Every punch landed heavy, raw. The rhythm built slowly, strike, exhale, reset. Sweat dripped into my eyes, mixing with the sting of something deeper. Pain sharpened everything. My muscles screamed, but it felt clean, honest. Ray watched from a distance, saying nothing. He knew better than to interrupt. By the time I stopped, my hand was shaking. The tape around my knuckles had gone dark with blood. I peeled it off slowly, breath ragged. "Better?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "But getting there." He grinned. "Good. Pain's just proof you're still in the fight." That night, I came home to find the house bathed in moonlight. The boxes were still there in the garage, neat and silent. I opened the back door and stepped outside, the air cool against my skin. The storm had finally passed. The world smelled new. Inside, Emma's light was still on. I peeked in. She was asleep over her sketchbook, pencil in hand. She'd drawn a house, cracked walls, dark windows, but with a small light in one room. My chest tightened. I covered her with a blanket and kissed her forehead. Back in the living room, I stood in front of the fireplace. For years, it had been nothing but decoration, a symbol of warmth that never really existed. I knelt down, opened the grate, and fed it the note first. Then a handful of old photos. Her face curled in the flames, turning to black curls of paper. The heat licked my hands, and for the first time in months, I felt warm for the right reason. When the fire died down, I sat on the floor, watching the embers fade to a dull red glow. The air smelled of smoke and closure. I didn't cry. There was nothing left to cry about. Outside, rain began to fall again, soft and steady, tapping the windows like an apology from the sky. I leaned back against the couch, closing my eyes. The exhaustion wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, stripped bare of everything that used to hurt. Tomorrow I'd call a lawyer. Tomorrow I'd start whatever came next. But tonight I just breathed. For once, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Weeks passed. The kind of weeks that stretch and fold into each other until you lose count. The house grew quieter, cleaner, emptier. I didn't mind the silence anymore. It was predictable, at least. Honest. Vanessa hadn't come back. Not once. The divorce papers arrived in a plain envelope one Thursday morning. No note, no apology. Just her name printed neatly beside mine, divided by white space and legal distance. I didn't sign them right away. I left them on the kitchen counter, beside her ring, still where I'd placed it weeks ago. It caught the morning light sometimes, a tiny glint of what used to mean forever. Emma barely mentioned her mother now. She'd stopped waiting for phone calls that didn't come, stopped asking when Vanessa would visit. She spent most of her time at school or drawing in her room. Her walls were covered in sketches, storm clouds, empty rooms, and lately, a figure standing alone in the rain. One night, as I passed her door, she looked up from her sketchbook. "Are you still angry?" she asked. I paused. At who? Mom. I thought about it. The anger had burned out weeks ago, leaving behind something quieter. "No," I said. "Not angry. Just done." She nodded, studying me with eyes too wise for 14. "You look different," she said. "Better or worse?" "Stronger," she said simply. That word stuck with me. Stronger. At Ray's gym, I'd stopped counting punches. I wasn't there to vent anymore. I was there to rebuild. The rhythm became therapy. Each swing, each breath, each bead of sweat, a kind of prayer to the version of myself I'd almost forgotten. Ray noticed it too. "You're hitting clean," he said one afternoon. "No anger in it. Just focus." "Guess I ran out of things to fight against," I said. He grinned. "Then start fighting for something." That line stayed with me. Fighting for something. After that, I started running again, early mornings before the city woke. The air was cold, sharp in my lungs, but it felt like a purge. Each step carried a little less weight. The first few nights without Vanessa had been torture. Now, they were quiet rituals. Dinner with Emma, the two of us learning how to exist without walking around ghosts. We talked more, laughed sometimes. She told me about a boy in her class who'd drawn her portrait. I told her he had good taste. There were moments I almost felt guilty for the peace creeping back in. Like happiness was something I wasn't supposed to touch yet. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed. Her name flashed across the screen for the first time in weeks. I didn't answer. A voicemail came through seconds later. I hesitated before pressing play. "Ethan," her voice said, small, trembling. "I made a mistake." A pause. "I don't know if you'll even listen to this, but I shouldn't have left things the way I did. Dylan's gone. It wasn't what I thought. None of it was." Another pause, longer this time. "You don't owe me anything. I miss home." The message ended there. I replayed it once, then deleted it. Home, I thought. The word didn't belong to her anymore. That night, I stood in the gym again, gloves on, breathing steady. The rain outside tapped against the high windows. Ray nodded at me from across the ring. "You ready?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. The bell rang. I stepped forward, fists up, body moving on instinct. The first hit came fast, clean. The next, faster. Each one a reminder that I wasn't fighting her, or the past, or even the man she'd chosen. I was fighting to stay awake in my own life. Fighting to rebuild. My arms burned, lungs ached, sweat stung my eyes. And for the first time in months, it felt good. Not as punishment, as proof. When the bell rang again, I dropped my hands, panting, and met Ray's grin. "You're back," he said. I wiped my face with a towel, breath uneven but steady. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." Outside, the rain had stopped. The streets shone under the glow of streetlights, calm after weeks of storms. I stepped outside, tilting my face toward the sky. The air was cool, clean, alive. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I didn't feel broken. I felt ready. Ray's words echoed in my head. The final truth I'd earned the hard way. This time, I'm not fighting to save her. I'm fighting to save me. It's strange how quiet healing sounds. There's no dramatic music, no cinematic dawn breaking over the horizon. Just small, steady things. The hiss of coffee. The creak of floorboards. The rhythm of a life being rebuilt, one quiet morning at a time. It's been 6 months since the divorce papers were finalized. 6 months since I stopped waiting for her car to pull into the driveway, or for her perfume to linger in the hallway. The house breathes easier now, lighter somehow, as if it knows the storm is past. Emma and I have found our rhythm. Saturdays are for pancakes and bad movies. Sundays we walk along the river, the kind of walks where silence isn't awkward, it's shared. She talks more these days. I listen better. We've both learned that love isn't in promises, it's in presence. Work's been steady. I've taken on more restoration jobs. Old homes with cracked walls, warped beams, histories buried beneath peeling paint. I've started to prefer them. There's honesty in the damage. You can see what's broken, name it, fix it. Unlike people. Ray still calls me kid, even though I'm pushing 40. I still train 3 nights a week. The punches come cleaner now, sharper, but not angry. I think he notices. Sometimes between rounds, he just nods and says, "Looks like you stopped fighting ghosts." He's right. One evening, after closing up the gym, he handed me a pair of new gloves. "You've earned these," he said. "You don't hit like a man trying to hurt something anymore. You hit like someone who's finally alive." Alive. It's a strange word to grow back into. Sometimes when the rain starts, I still catch myself glancing toward the window, remembering that night, her laugh, his coat around her shoulders. But the memory doesn't sting now. It's just a scar, healed but honest. Vanessa called once more, weeks ago, just long enough to say she was moving to another city. I told her I hoped she'd find peace. And I meant it. There was no venom left in my voice. Just truth. After we hung up, I stood outside for a long time, watching the sky bruise into dusk. The air smelled of wet earth and pine. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to fix anything. The following weekend, Emma and I drove to the coast. She wanted to see the ocean again, said she couldn't remember the last time. We walked barefoot along the sand until the horizon burned orange. She drew hearts in the tide foam, and I realized something simple. Sometimes you don't rebuild what's lost. You build something entirely new. When the sun dropped, she looked at me and said, "You're happy now." "I think so," I said. The drive home was quiet, the kind of silence that feels full, not empty. That night, after putting her to bed, I sat by the window with a cup of coffee and looked out at the dark yard. The rain had started again, light, patient, tapping against the glass. I thought about the man I'd been, quiet, loyal, blind in all the wrong ways. Then about the man sitting there now, breathing easier, shoulders lighter. The storm hadn't destroyed me. It had stripped me down to the frame, shown me where the real cracks were. And for once, I didn't cover them up. I learned to live with them, to let the light through. The phone buzzed once on the counter, a text from Ray. "Fight tomorrow at 7? I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. As I set the phone down, the rain eased into a whisper. The world outside shimmered under the streetlight, every drop catching the glow like tiny fragments of glass. For years, I'd been trying to save something that was never built to last. Now, I finally understood what Ray meant all along. You don't survive the fire by hiding from it. You walk through it, come out clean, and start again. I looked at my reflection in the window, the faint outline of a man rebuilt. And I said it out loud this time, not as a vow, but as a truth that had finally become real. I'm not fighting to save her anymore. I'm fighting to save me.